Hi, guys. Welcome to the chat. I am literally 20 minutes late for a really good reason. I had a family session tonight, and unfortunately, with some of those family sessions, it takes a while, you know? You time it for about 45 minutes to an hour, and then once you start delving into stuff, you're like, okay, this is going to be just a little bit longer, and I'm going to have to end this in a really calm way. So I need to take more time. So that's why I'm late, but I'm glad to see you guys participating. Let me go back and just acknowledge some of you because I think tonight is a highly requested video, and you guys are probably going to want to engage in a conversation. So hello, Mel Kep. Nice to see you. Welcome to the chat. Says, hey, hopefully y'all are having a good time. Hi, Courtney Fraser. Glad to see you. Welcome to the chat. Cherry's Jubilee. Welcome to the chat. Hello. Keisha, welcome to the chat. So glad to see you as well. Let me see who else is on here. Dragon Man Sassin, hello. Good evening to you as well. Welcome to the chat. I'm going to keep going. All right, you guys are having a conversation. Hello, Sean Hammer. Nice to see you. Welcome to the chat. Hello, Annabis, the opener of Ways. Welcome to the chat. Glad to see you. I will probably go back and try to reread some of these, but I think you guys were just getting acquainted with each other, this chat, and talking. Whoa. Okay, wait. That was my light. Hold on. I feel like you guys get a show almost every video. Because either my lights are falling down or something weird is happening. Hold on, let me fix this. I think last time it was my camera holder that fell apart. All right, I think I got it. This is the good thing of live video making and chatting because you get to see everything when it falls apart. So, all right, guys. So I see a little bit of conversation here. I don't think it's anything that I need to go over. Hi, I'm going to say M. Welcome to the chat. Glad to see you here. Yes, you did make it, and I made it too. I had some tech issues at the beginning. But all right, so let me jump in, okay, guys, because I don't want to keep all of us on this live chat too long tonight. It's already 9 p.m. Hi, Luna. I just saw you sign in. Welcome to the chat. Oh, thank you, Dragon Man Assassin. That's so sweet of you, and I haven't even gotten started. So thank you so much for that kindness. This is a highly requested video. I'm going to delve into kind of what we're going to be talking about tonight because, this has been a video I've put off for quite some time. And I put it off because, number one, I think there's a lot of limitation to the theory of love languages. I appreciate the idea behind it, and I'm going to explain it a little bit in tonight's live chat. But I think there's some limitations. I also think it was a little bit of a popular idea at the time that the book, The 5 Love Languages, came out. I think that was around 1992. So it was a little bit of a popular idea, and everybody just kind of, grabbed a part of that. Like, oh, that's a good one. I'm going to catch that. I'm going to take that in and drink it up and learn about it and make my relationships better. And I think reality hit a few years after that with most human beings that, okay, maybe love languages isn't all that I need to learn about to make a relationship work. And I'm talking about love languages within a family, guys, not a relationship, but within a family. So I'm going to be highlighting that. And I'm also going to give you a little bit of insight on why the love languages may not work in your unhealthy and, for lack of a clinical term, toxic family. So let's delve into kind of what love languages are. And I encourage you guys to give me your ideas and your theories about the love languages. I'm on the fence about them. Love languages were basically highlighted by and developed by Dr. Chapman in 1992. He had the idea in the book, The 5 Love Languages, that we all communicate in a different way. And sometimes we communicate based on what our internal needs are at the time. So let's say, for example, you're dating someone or you're married to someone, and you tend to respond to your spouse when he gives you wonderful things, right? He may have bought you some flowers, or he may have taken you out to dinner or something, right? He's given you something, or she's given you something, right? So that is really the love language of gift giving. And so let's say that's your love language. Within your family, you may have a different kind of love language. You may, like, acts of service, for example, right? Maybe your cousin coming over to help you clean the house, or your brother coming over to help you watch the kids. So your love language may be I need somebody to do something for me that really needs to get done. And so therefore I'm going to feel loved, right? So these ideas are good in their place. And I think Dr. Chapman had the goal of illuminating how we need to communicate with people that we are connected to. But I also think the love languages can be limited, especially when you're dealing with a dysfunctional, unhealthy, toxic, or traumatizing family. So, the first love language, and there's five. So, the first one is words of affirmation. And I can define these. The second is receiving gifts or gift giving. The third is quality of time. So, how much time am I spending with this person to show them that I care, that I love them, right? So, an example of that would be, let's say your mom is somebody that you just don't want to deal with. Well, she may accuse you of not spending enough time with her. And so, therefore, you don't love her. But it's the reason is that you're critical, you're unhealthy, you've traumatized me in the past, we have a bad relationship. Doesn't necessarily mean that that I don't love you. I just can't deal with you, right? So you may have, for example, a parent who says, I really need to feel loved by you coming over and spending time with me. And you may be like, nah, I don't think so, because we don't really get along that well and it's going to be toxic. So some people do feel that you show them love through quality time. The other the love language, excuse me, is physical touch, right? So hugging a family member, holding their hand, the list goes on. So what did I say? Did I say five, guys? I feel like I missed one. Words of affirmation, acts of service. That's the one that I missed. And that is going over, a family member's house, maybe or maybe your spouse's house, to kind of help them do something. So those are the five love languages. But why doesn't the five love languages seem to work in toxic, unhealthy, dysfunctional families where you may feel traumatized, you may feel unloved, you may feel like you have a narcissistic parent? What's going on in the family dynamic that the five love languages just doesn't work? And so I'm going to get into that in just a little bit. I do want to recognize some of you that are signing on. Blessed in every area of my life. Hello. Happy Wednesday to you too. Glad to see you in the chat as always. Let me make sure I have this right, because I can't really see from that distance. Jern Davis, hopefully I have that right. Hello, welcome to the chat. Glad to see you. Fairy Girl, hello, welcome to the chat. So glad to see you as well. Let me go to Sean Hammer. So Sean Hammer is saying, I sense they didn't do any of it. Wait, let me make sure I'm following you correctly. Hold on. Thank you, Ed Fairy Girl. Thank you so much for that. I love your icons. Let me make sure I'm understanding. So, Sean Hammer, you might be completing a sentence something that I stated. You may be completing it. You said, I sense they didn't do any of it consciously. They just defaulted to the toxic foundations they were accustomed to. Hopefully, I'm understanding that right. And yes, you may be right. I think sometimes it's difficult for certain individuals, and we're talking about family here on this channel and in this live chat tonight. I think that there are family members who don't intentionally try to not love you, or or that they intentionally dislike you, or doesn't want to embrace you. I think you might be right, if I'm understanding you correctly, that this is just the foundation of who they are, and they default to that toxic, dysfunctional pattern of behavior. And that's a possibility. If we're talking about, for example, family members who are easy to get along with, you love them, you care about them, you want to be connected to them, they're healthy individuals, and they somehow, sometimes you rub each other the wrong way, or communication is poor, or you don't always feel loved by them. That could be because they are defaulting to a toxic foundation, right? I think we all have, these foundational pieces of who we are that can interfere with any relationship, right? We all have something, and within a family dynamic, everybody plays a role in the family. And so, I think it's easy to grow up with the toxic foundation. And even though you may be trying to have positive relationships or healthy relationships in your adulthood, you can default to that toxic foundation, or what you've kind of been raised on, or how you've kind of grown up seeing life through that toxic lens, if that makes sense. So hopefully I understood that. But I do think some people, they default to the toxic foundation of just who they are. And that's one of the reasons why the love languages just don't always work, right? Being aware of your love language and the other family member's love language, for example, it doesn't always work like the book says it works, because there's a lot going on within a family dynamic. There may also be mental health issues, substance abuse issues, boundary violations, all kind of things within a family dynamic that doesn't allow the concept of the five love languages to work. Okay, let me just make sure before I jump back in. Hello, Liberty Kim. Welcome to the chat. So glad to see you. Hello. Says one therapist said we are living in the tail end of a minimum 3 generations of toxic patterns never dealt with. Okay, let me do that again. One therapist said we are living in the tail end of a minimum 3 generations of toxic patterns never dealt with. Yeah, that's a really good one. I like that. Kudos to that therapist, because I think we are. If I think about my own family personally, my mom and my grandmother and her mother, those were the 3 generations that I connected to within my family. I knew them very well. I love them so much. But my both of my grandparents are now deceased as of 2 years ago. But when I did have my grandmother, and when I did have my great grandmother some 10 years ago, I'm gonna say yes, there were 3 generations of toxic behaviors. Like, my great grandmother and my grandmother didn't have a good relationship. And then as my mom was growing up over time, my mom and my grandmother didn't have a good relationship. So there's 3 generations of problems, right? And all families have them, but in some, the toxicity is more noticeable. And so I could notice it in my great grandmother, my grandmother, and how my grandmother, my mom communicated. And here I am, the 4th generation, and my mom and I are like this. So I think there's some truth to that for sure. You also want to consider too culture and ethnicity, because sometimes generational toxicity takes on a different pattern. It's a whole different animal when you consider culture and ethnicity and race. So I'm glad you mentioned that, Liberty Can. I think that's an important point. I saw somebody else just sign on. Hello, Citizen King. Nice to see you. Welcome to the chat. Says, I rock a wonderful recreation of that Joan Crawford versus the Pepsi Cola board of directors scene from Mommy Dearest. Oh my God. Are you guys familiar with Mommy Dearest before I jump back into the 5 love languages? Mommy Dearest is really representative of my video on psychopathic mothers. And I hate to say that, because I adore moms that are good moms, that are loving moms, that are dedicated moms. But there are those mothers who are like the mother in the movie Mommy Dearest. So I might post the movie Mommy Dearest in the description box when I'm done with this live chat, just so you guys can go back and see it. But Mommy Dearest is quite a character, that's for sure. So totally over. Hello, welcome to the chat. I think you're new. Welcome. Says, I found her last week. She's really good. Thank you so much. That's so sweet of you. And I'm glad you came on. Glad you're here. Okay, I just want to make sure I'm not missing anything, guys. Okay, so let me give you some ideas to think about before I go on. Courtney Fraser, I'll read yours really quickly. You say the 5 love languages definitely don't work well in my family. It is hard for me to express my needs due to me having disabilities. Yeah, absolutely. So let me piggyback on this a little bit, that I'll get back into the content. That the 5 love languages for you, Courtney, most certainly wouldn't work. Everything that you've kind of shared on the channel, everything that you have said to me, or even some of the comments that you've put in the comment section, it seems like a really toxic and unhealthy dynamic within the family. And when you have a difficult, toxic, dysfunctional dynamic within a family, you're not going to be able to benefit from the concept of the 5 love languages, right? If you have a narcissistic father who's just a bully, He's a terror. He treats you like he doesn't love you, right? One minute he seems like this great loving dad, the next minute he's yelling and screaming at you, cursing you out, doesn't want to do anything to support you. If you have a sibling who is intimidated or jealous or envious of you or hateful and angry and just creates all this pandemonium in your life, you're not going to be able to feel any kind of love through acts of service. You've hurt me, right? You're not going to be able to feel any kind of love through hugs or any kind of physical touch from a family member that has, cursed you out and has been nothing but trouble in your life. You're also not going to feel any love receiving gifts from them, right? It's kind of like the holiday. Nobody wants to receive gifts at Christmas from you, and you've abused me all my life, right? So you're right, Courtney. Sometimes the concept of the five love languages just doesn't fit. And I saw, I'm going to say over the holiday season, this past holiday, Thanksgiving, well, let me say Halloween. So Halloween, Thanksgiving, Christmas, and New Year's. Those were the holidays where I saw an influx of clients. They were just almost coming to me in droves. Like literally, my phone was ringing off the hook. And one of the common themes that I saw, and my intern saw as well, was that there was all of this anxiety over Christmas and Thanksgiving, and how do I reconnect with this family member after they've hurt me, and do I give a gift or do I not? Do I give a gift card? Do I not? Do I text this person around Thanksgiving? How do I manage this? And I saw a lot of the concept of the five love languages. I want to give a gift. I want to spend quality time. It's Christmas. I want to hug people again because it's the holidays, right? But it just didn't fit the unhealthy, toxic dynamic of the families that were coming to see me. And I think that's what the big letdown was for a lot of my clients that came to my practice over the holiday season. They realized that, okay, well, maybe kind of going into this holiday with the mindset that we can hug each other again and text each other again and call each other again and give gifts, maybe that's not enough to feel loved. And so the concept of the five love languages really was shown to me over the holiday. And the sadness that my clients were feeling because they couldn't fit into the holiday. The book just didn't fit their situation. So that was the long road to my point, that sometimes the book doesn't fit your situation. So what's wrong here, right? Because the book works for some people, but it doesn't work for many. The concept works for some people, but not for many other kinds of people, right? If I said that right. So here's my first idea on this, and here's what research kind of backs as well. There's some research studies that says that the five love languages may not be a universal theory, that we need to look at this in an individual case by case basis, right? It's nice to be loved, it's nice to be hugged and your hand held, it's nice to receive gifts and acts of service, but is that enough? So there's been some research that says that no, it's not enough. It's only one component of the relationship. There's always been there's always been kind of like this war, this tug of war between science and the five love languages, the concept, because our research suggests that this just doesn't work all the time. So here's what I've seen, and you may have seen this in your family as well. You're not going to be receptive to any of the five love languages, okay? If you oh, my battery's dying. Hold on, guys. If you feel like you are being emotionally extorted. Okay, so you're not going to feel any kind of love or any kind of selflessness or compassion from a family member who has emotionally extorted you. Now, emotional extortion is emotional blackmail. It's, I'm going to take a sensitive part of who you are, a vulnerable piece of who you are, maybe something you've told me about your abusive history, maybe something that you told me while you were crying and vulnerable and in pain and broken. Maybe it was something that, I did to help you as your father, your mother. Maybe I loaned you about $3,000 to buy your first home, and now I'm using that against you. Emotional extortion or emotional blackmail is taking that vulnerable piece of the person and manipulating that to benefit you in some way, right? So you're not going to feel any of the five love languages from a person who emotionally blackmails you or emotionally extorts you, right? right? You may also find that in a family that's dysfunctional and toxic and unhealthy, maybe you're suffering from PTSD because of what has happened in your family. You want to keep in mind that you're not going to feel the authenticity of the five love language in a family where there is no love at the foundation, right? The idea of, okay, hugging someone, holding their hand within the family, offering to help a family member, complimenting a family member, receiving a compliment from a family member, right? Receiving help, financial, psychological, literal help from a family member. That's not going to feel authentic to you if you have been abused, traumatized, manipulated, triangulated. You're just not going to feel any of the five love languages, right? You're not going to feel any of that, because there's no authenticity in a family that's dysfunctional and toxic. There just isn't, right? There's nothing to stand on. So you may do something nice for me, so what? Like, but you've hurt me over here many, many times, right? So the five love languages in a toxic, unhealthy dynamic, it matters this much, right? So that's another thing to think of. The other thing is, who wants to be hugged by or physically supported by or whatever, handheld, whatever, by somebody who has been physically abusive, maybe sexually abusive within a family. Maybe this is a situation where there's domestic violence, or you've witnessed it, or you've had some weird touching from a parent, or some weird touching from a cousin or a sister or a brother. You're not going to feel loved, right, by hugs. You're not going to feel loved by your hand being held. So this concept doesn't fit either within a dysfunctional, toxic family, right? And let's say, for example, you have a family member who's trying to compliment you. You're not going to receive that. You don't want to receive compliments from a toxic, unhealthy, maybe traumatizing family member who has hurt you, right? So that doesn't fit either. So it's really complicated, right? You would think that the concept of the five love languages would fit. And one of my clients today said this, and I thought this was interesting. She says, I thought that maybe if I read the book, shared the book, the relationship would be fine. And as long as we know what each other needs, and as long as I'll give you an example, as long as my father knows that showing me love is by showing me respect and giving me space, everything should be fine. And it just wasn't. And she's still working through things because it just wasn't enough. Let me go to the chat box, guys. I'm going to take a breather here. Let me go to the chat box and make sure I'm not missing anything. Okay. I think Luna, you're saying that you need to watch Mommy Dearest. Is that what you're saying? The movie or the series, Mommy Dearest? Maybe. I think so. Whoops. Fairy Girl says, I want better for our next generation. That's why I'm so grateful for folks like Tamara to help. Thank you, Fairy Girl. That's so sweet. Yeah, I do. I want better for our next generation as well. Hence the reason I wrote my book, which is for teenagers and, young adults, 18, 19, 20. I do as well. Sean Hammer says, when expressing your thoughts, feelings is seen as bringing unwelcomed conflict. Yes, it is. It has to see oneself ever. Oh, it is hard to, I'm sorry. It is hard to see oneself ever being heard by those folks. Yeah. So let's say, for example, that you feel love from anybody, right? This is just your love language, that you need to be able to emotionally and psychologically express yourself through written expression, right? Journaling, talking, whatever. You can't open up to family members who are going to critique you, who are going to minimize you. Maybe they're condescending, maybe they're emotionally abusive, maybe they are hateful, maybe they have a facial expression that says, I don't want to hear what you have to say, right? And sometimes, and this happened to me in a family a couple weeks ago, and I couldn't believe what my eyes were seeing. But the person, in the toxic dynamic, could be trying to get a really important point across about how they're feeling and thinking about life in the family. And you may get a family member who doesn't necessarily show anything. There's like this blank look. It's flat. We call it in our clinical language as psychotherapists, we call it our flat affect, right? It's like a flat affect. There's nothing there, and it just feels like you're talking to a wall, and that can regress you emotionally and psychologically in a lot of ways. And so you're right, Sean Hammer. It's not healthy. You can't get through to individuals who just can't hear you, or just can't appreciate what you're trying to say to them or express to them, right? I've been on a lot of family sessions over my 14 years of experience, and let me tell you that if you don't feel heard within the family, you're going to run away from that family, right? There's going to be, you're going to shut down. There's going to be closed off communication. You're probably not going to open up in any form or fashion. You're probably going to slam the door and keep going, because there's no reason in trying to reach a family member that just doesn't hear you, right? All right. So One Love says, hello, all, going back, watching replay. Yeah, I'm glad. Go ahead, watch replay. I didn't talk about much at the very beginning. I was just kind of warming everybody up there. But yeah, go back and watch, because there's a few good comments here. So Totally Over says, my family has a hate language. Oh, okay. So Totally Over says, my family has a hate language. Yeah. Have any of you had that in your family? I see it in sessions sometimes. I also see it with people who consult with me. And I've also seen it in previous settings in my profession, where that family hate language may be a specific word. It may be a sentence or two. It may be something that's been said multiple times in the past. Or it can just be the style in which the communication is occurring, right? How something is said or how it's not said. So yeah, I think there's definitely a hate language for sure within families. Citizen King says, you must read Fat Joe's new autobiography, The Book of Jose. He covers the gamut of physical, emotional, and financial domestic violence before in his healing journey with group therapy. Yeah, thank you so much for that, Citizen King. I appreciate that. I love when you guys give resources to each other, because it also gives resources to me to pull from and to read about as well. So thank you for that. Chrissy W, welcome to the chat. So glad to see you. Says, my cousin got mad at me for not buying her a Christmas gift. Right. So what's her love language, right? Yeah, it's probably receiving gifts. And she also didn't stick up for me when her boyfriend said something sexually inappropriate to me. She got mad at me for saying something. Yeah. So, what do you think her other love language is? Why do you think she got so offended? Well, we know that her first love language, by what you tell us, she was offended because you didn't get her anything, is gift giving or gift receiving. So that's one. I don't know what the other issue is there. Maybe it was because you called out her boyfriend and she's insecure, having to consider the fact that he is inappropriate with her sister. I don't know, or I'm sorry, that he is inappropriate with her cousin, because you guys are cousins. So I don't know. That's something to think about. Luna says, no contact for 3 years now. Yes, heart and fire. Yeah, absolutely. Sometimes going no contact is the only way for you to get that peace of mind. And I think that's okay. Running away and not looking back and processing it and trying to figure out what went wrong, there may be a bump in the road if you do it that way. But once you can kind of process what happened, walk away and not look back, you can experience what's called post-traumatic growth. And that's the whole idea, that you've had a traumatic situation happen. You've found some space in between you and that trauma. So you're not so close to that trauma where you feel vulnerable and delicate, right? So there's some space between you and that trauma, right? And so then you can kind of put some things behind you so you can move ahead in a healthier way. So that's post-traumatic growth. And you can experience that sometimes if you walk away from those toxic, unhealthy family members that you're holding on to, and even if you're not holding on to them literally, you might be holding on to them, or you might be holding on to them, right? My great grandmother, who was really into a lot of Native American concepts, she used to say to my mom all the time, she says, you might as well be back in the trauma if you're going to continue to talk about it. And so that made a lot of sense, So All right. Courtney Fraser says, my family always called me the tactile defender growing up as I hated touch. Yeah. Yeah. I never understood why I would not like being touched as a child. Yeah. Some people have that as a preference. I'm actually a touchy feely person. I hug my kids. I let kids kiss me on the cheek sometimes. Not my personal kids. I call my kids in my practice my kids and the kids that I mentor because I just love them so much. But I let them hug me. Sometimes if they're like this high, right? I hold their hand, we play games, we do stuff. So like I'm really touchy feely, right? So that's my love language. That's part of my love language. But there are some people who just can't do that, right? And that might be because of a sexual abuse history. That might be because it makes you feel too vulnerable. It also could trigger a flashback if you have family trauma or some kind of PTSD, right? And it also may be clinical and diagnostic. One of the things I have on my intake forms when I see new clients is, you know, do you appreciate physical touch? Is physical touch inappropriate to you? Is physical touch something that you're not okay with? Because sometimes that opens the door for me to be able to question about sexual abuse, fear, trauma, the list goes on. And it may also give me some insights on an autism spectrum disorder or some kind of clinical diagnosis like that. All right, so let me jump back in, okay, guys? I don't know. Let me know if you're having some trouble hearing me because my microphone wasn't working well tonight. So just let me know. I think it's okay, though. Okay, so let's go back. I think we left off at really not feeling this authentic connection with family when it's toxic, dysfunctional, unhealthy, narcissistic, the list goes on, right? And physical touch. I think we did talk about that a little bit. That's the other love language. I'm sure you're well aware of it. But let's look at this from a toxic family perspective. You don't want to be touched by anybody who is somebody that may have sexually abused you, touched you inappropriately. Maybe there was corporal punishment or spanking. Maybe there was some intense physical abuse. And I'm revisiting this because I want to bring one specific point of this up that I missed earlier, which is that there are some families where physical punishment turns into physical abuse because the abuse is intense. About 5 years ago, I counseled a family where the children had severe physical abuse and they wore so many marks on their body. It was just so hard to believe. I needed my own consultation just to deal with that case. But the kids had a lot of marks on their body. Why? Because dad would use an extension cord, he would use a shoe, he would use his cell phone. Like, consider this, okay? Consider hitting a child with this. Like, this hurts. And he would literally take his phone and hurt the child that way. Used extension cords. He also used a fly swatter, but he would use it in a way that would make it kind of like sting. He would use anything he could get his hands on, and he learned that abusive behavior from his own father. But what happened in this scenario is that the kids came to therapy. They did therapy with me for about 4 years, and they became adolescents while with me who did not like physical touch, and that interfered with their dating relationships. That interfered with their relationship with their adopted family because they were taken off the father and the mother, the biological mother. It interfered with a lot. It even interfered to a point of these two. They were twins, the two siblings not being able to wear certain clothing because it reminded them of the abuse. It reminded them of the thing that they were wearing when the abuse was happening. So physical touch was a no-no for them. Unfortunately, they missed out on a lot of the good pieces of being a child, right? Children should be hugged and loved, but because of their intense abuse, they couldn't deal with that. Now, the next thing is, it's really hard to feel any kind of love from a family where the foundation of the family is narcissistic, where the foundation of the family is manipulative and triangulating. You're not going to want to experience any kind of acts of service, any kind of words of positive affirmation, any compliments, nothing, gifts from an individual in the family who is a pathological liar, who is a cold hearted, callous narcissist that only cares about how they look, what they bring to the table, what you bring to the table, how much money they make, the nice cars they drive, what job position they're in, right? How much they can achieve, all that shallow stuff, right? How good their family is looking to the outside world, their reputation, their money, right? You're not going to want anything to do with them because of that foundation of who they are. I'll give you a brief example of this. I happened to run into a lady 3 weeks ago in a shopping mall, and people just talk to me. Okay, it's like I wear therapist on the back of my jacket or something. But she comes up to me and she's talking on her cell phone and she's like looking at clothing, and I'm looking at things. And then when she got off the phone, she's like, "I'm sorry if you heard that conversation." And I said, "No, I didn't hear it at all," even though I did. I was like, "No, no, I didn't hear it." And she says, "She says, one of the things I hate about my family is that they're so narcissistic, and I come from this cold, callous family that thinks that if we just buy each other things, all the pain and the hurt will go away. If we just compliment each other, all the hurt and the pain will go away. If we just spend quality time with each other, all the hurt and the pain will go away." And she literally had a 15-minute therapy session with me. She's like, "That's not going to cut it for me. My only love language right now is to completely disappear. I want nothing to do with my family." And that became her love language. She wanted separation from her family, isolation. She did not want to deal with them. She did not want to be hurt all over again. And the number one thing that she drove home was that cold, callous foundation of narcissism. So you're not going to want to get anything from anybody, and I'm sure you can relate, that's in your family, that's unhealthy, that's abusive, toxic, traumatizing. The, the list goes on. If at the core of all your interactions with your family, there's narcissism, there's shallowness, there's cold-heartedness, there's callousness. I also think too that, and I want to put this out here as well, that love languages do not necessarily fit situations where there's family trauma. Family trauma tends to be intergenerational. It tends to be really difficult to heal. And it also tends to take a lot of time to heal. If you decide to jump into therapy and get help for the things that's going on in your family, the concept of the five love languages doesn't matter if you're having flashbacks, if you're having intense memories of situations where you were traumatized by a family member. It's not going to work if you feel hyper vigilant every time you see that family member. I don't care how many words of affirmation you give me. If I have deep seated family trauma, I don't want to hear what you have to say, right? So you're not going to cling to that, the concept of the five love languages, if you are dealing with a family that triggers all the bad memories, right? If there's intergenerational trauma that hasn't been resolved, right? So the five love languages doesn't fit into that concept of family trauma. So don't feel bad if you can't seem to figure out, like, why didn't what I did for them matter? Why didn't anything I said to them matter? Well, it's because there's probably family trauma and there's a lot going on. And the five love languages just doesn't match. All right, let me go to the comment section, guys. I want to make sure that I'm answering you and kind of staying on top of things. And then we're going to wrap up because it's literally 10 p.m. EST, so Eastern Standard Time. Okay. Sure, Jubilee says, "Oh, receiving compliments is awful." Yeah, because, kind of consider this. You have a narcissistic mom, for example, and the compliments can sometimes be backwards. So here's what I mean by backwards compliment. Something like, "You look so good. Oh my God, I haven't seen you in so long. You look just like you used to look when you were younger. I haven't seen that you in a long time." And you may have a hard time processing that, like, wait a minute, there was a put down somewhere in there, right? Another example of a backwards compliment may be, let's say you have a father, you're a guy, you've been pumping a lot of iron, you look pretty good, right? You're sucked in, you're looking pretty good, and you feel good about you. But let's say your narcissistic dad compliments you and says, "You're looking pretty good there, looking pretty good there. You got to get a little bit more here, but you're looking good. You're looking good. Maybe, shave this a little bit, and, cut this a little bit, but you're looking good. You look really good." Like, that's a backwards kind of compliment. So yes, Cherries Jubilee, compliments can be the worst for sure. Yeah. Citizen King says, "I've used Dr. Romani's What of It." response to fix emotional blackmailers. Yeah, absolutely. Love her. Yeah, I probably should catch up on some of the things that she's talking about just to kind of, be able to relate to you guys when you bring her up. I don't follow her work and I probably should. But yes, and she also talks a lot about the gray rock method, which kind of takes you out of the equation of communication with your family emotionally, and you kind of use all your logic and all of your intellectualization instead. So yeah, yeah, I think she's good. I think she's good. Thank you for mentioning that. All right. Oh my God, I'm missing people. I'm so sorry. John Hammer says, here's a tactic they use. Okay, okay, it was wrong. Can we talk about something else now? How is the business doing? Oh, yeah. Oh, yeah. They totally switch, right? They switch the conversation. That happens in therapy sessions that I'm leading. And I'm like, no, let's not do that because that could either be gaslighting or stonewalling. And we're not going to do either one. So choose another tactic because I don't like that, right? It's like you're trying to talk, you're trying to get your emotions out, you're trying to process, and they totally change the entire topic, or they bring something up that's irrelevant, right? You may also, too, Sean Hammer, and the rest of you in the chat box, you may also see family members who may do things like, what's an example? They may kind of throw a monkey wrench in the conversation by asking you a question that's likely going to throw you off and hurt your feelings, right? So let's say, for example, you walked away from the family, you've been estranged from your family for a while. Somehow you came back into the family, maybe there's a death, a wedding, a birth, something like that. You guys are now communicating temporarily. You may have a narcissistic or an unhealthy dysfunctional parent say something like, you remind me of the little girl that you used to be, and I just wondered, what happened to you, right? What changed about you? Something really changed about you. What is that? Do you know what that is? Sometimes they will throw those condescending questions in there, and it kind of leaves you stumbled, like, what kind of question is that? How am I supposed to answer that? It's possibly what we call a delay tactic. It's a delay tactic. um Cherry's Jubilee says, my father was amazing and he passed when I was 10 weeks. Oh my, I'm so sorry. Yeah, that's hard. I think that's hard when you lose a parent before you really get to know them, or before you get to know them at all. Okay. Deborah Deborah Hubert. Welcome to the chat. So glad to see you. Let me see what you say. She says, I don't have any contact right now with family, with any of them. Yeah. Yeah, and I wonder if that's going better for you. You probably have a little bit more peace of mind not being so interconnected with people that aren't healthy. Okay. Deborah Hubert says physical touch was an issue for me for many years because of the abuse from my father. Therapy helped me work through it. Yeah, absolutely. I'm glad you brought that up. So I can highlight something in that. Thank you for that. I think when it comes to physical touch, working in therapy can be helpful because maybe there's a trauma component to that, right? Maybe there's a foundation of trauma that you need to work through. And in order to work through it, you have to go to therapy as opposed to just kind of throwing that on the back burner and thinking, I just don't like people to touch me. Well, there could be some trauma associated with that. So it's probably a good thing to delve into that a little bit in therapy if you decide to go. If you don't like therapy, because not everybody does, and you can't always find a good therapist, you could definitely journal your thoughts and feelings for when you are touched, right? That person touched me on my arm and this was my immediate reaction. Or, that person touched me on my arm. I do that a lot to people when I'm talking to them. Oh my goodness. I do that a lot to people when I'm talking to them. I touch them. And sometimes I can feel it's welcomed. Most times it's welcome. Sometimes I could feel like, oh, don't touch me. And then that's when I know, okay, there's some trauma there. Something's going on. But you can journal it, right? How did I feel before, after, and during that person touched my hand or, hugged me? And you can kind of work through it yourself that way as well. Hello, Heather Smith. Welcome to the chat. Glad to see you. Says very true, Miss Tamara, 100%. Oh yeah, probably something I said earlier. Welcome to the chat. Glad to see you. All right. I feel like I'm missing people, and I kind of am. All right, let me get back into this, guys, because I want to make sure you have the rest of this, and then we're going to wrap up so that we can wrap up for the night. It's 10 p.m. Eastern time. My goodness. Okay. Liberty Can, I just saw one of your comments. I'll come back to you. Yeah, I'll try to come back to you. So I think where we left off was that sometimes the five love languages doesn't fit into a family with family trauma or intergenerational trauma. Let me also mention that cultural and societal norms can make the five love languages difficult in your family. Here's what I mean by that. Society has given us this false narrative, this false family idea that family is everything. You're nothing without your family. You have nothing if you don't have your family. And I've always been rather opposed to that idea, because what do you do if all of your family members die? Does that mean that you no longer have anything? What do you do if all your family members pass away or leave you or walk away from you or totally stop talking to you? Does that mean that you are a nobody or that you have nothing because of that? Absolutely not. So it's a limited cultural and societal view that needs to be changed, which is partly what I'm trying to do on this channel little by little, but it's a view that needs to be changed. The five love languages just doesn't fit sometimes into that equation, right? That cultural and social idea that family is everything. If you're in a family where there's trauma and there's hurt and there's pain and there's emotional disturbance and there's just a lot of turmoil and chaos, you're not going to want anything to do with your family, right? So it's going to be a little bit unrealistic, I think, to say, wow, maybe if my family members would do A, B, and C, we would have a better relationship. Or maybe if I did A, B, and C for my family, they would know that I love them because I'm doing an act of service for them. None of that matters, right? None of that matters if you're not in a healthy family dynamic. And unfortunately, too, I think a lot of people think that because of society's message that family is everything and you're nothing without family, and because of the whole concept of the five love languages, that if you engage those two things, you're probably going to be happy. So here's what I mean. If you cling to that idea, some people may feel that if they cling to that idea that family is everything, and then they try out those five love languages and they try to like blend those two, you may even begin to fall for this false idea that life will be better with my family. All I have to do is believe that family is everything, stay close to my family, and then also utilize the five love languages, and I think everything is going to be great. And that's just not the reality of it, right? Because there's a lot going on in families. I said that at the beginning. And then excuse me, and then there's this false narrative that family is everything, and that's not true, right? So when you look at those things, you probably have a lot of question marks going up, right? The other thing too is I think we all change. Like, we're so dynamic as human beings. So maybe what was an act of service to your parent who is emotionally labile, meaning switchable and up and down like a roller coaster, or maybe the love language of your psychopathic father or your narcissistic father used to be quality time, but since you have been estranged from the family or you've put some distance between you, maybe that love language has changed, right? And guess what? Maybe none of those concepts, right, of the five love languages fits at all. So we change, we're dynamic, and so trying to utilize this concept within a dysfunctional, constantly changing, unhealthy, maybe traumatized family dynamic is just, it can feel impossible sometimes, right? So here's why I'm saying all this. I think that it's wonderful if you can be loved. It's wonderful if there's quality time. It's wonderful if there are acts of service, if you can be complimented and praised and loved and supported. But that's not always it for everybody, right? Because you can exist in a family that does all of that, and you're still hurt and you're still traumatized and you're still dealing with a narcissistic cold parent, and you're still dealing with that father that just doesn't know how to love you and embrace you as his child, right? So the concept is a little bit limited, and I'm not trying to throw any shade on the concept, but I am trying to get you to view this in a little bit of a different way as well, and kind of expand your thinking that even though I may engage the five love languages, or I may hope that happens to me within my unhealthy family dynamic, it's probably not going to survive if I'm getting hurt still in that family at the same time. I have somebody that consulted with me yesterday, and she said, I bought all seven of my family members a book on the five love languages, and I dared them to practice one at least every day for the next 3 months. And what she found is that while there was acts of service, while there was love and compassion, while there was physical touch, while there were words of affirmation, all of that stuff was happening, but there was also pain and dysfunction and toxicity still happening all at the same time. It's like that really didn't do anything but illuminate the toxicity within the family, right? That, okay, we can do all of these wonderful things, and yet we're still hurting each other. And I'm still hurt, and I'm still feeling abused, and I'm still feeling, some kind of way about our family dynamic. So keep in mind, guys, that this may work, but then it may not. And if it doesn't work, there's good reason. And I've given you all the reasons in this live chat why it doesn't work. All right, so let me conclude by looking at the chat box, okay? Cherry's Jubilees. Oh, geez, I hit the wrong button. Why do I do this, guys? Every chat. I swear, this is jinxed. Cherry's Jubilee, I totally lost your whole conversation. I'm so sorry. Citizens King says in 3 weeks, I should be certified in wellness counseling by Cornell University. Good for you. Congratulations. That is wonderful. I love when people are in the chat box and they're like, I'm going to get this certification, or I'm going to become a therapist in a month. I think that's so inspiring. It shows that you are passionate about what we're talking about. So congratulations. That's great. Courtney Fraser says, I might need to talk to you individually about some things that I'm wondering about regarding my family and my personal history. Yeah, absolutely. Feel free to email me. My email, for those of you who don't know, if you're new on the channel, is down in the description box. It's contact@anchoredinKnowledge.com. That's my work email. I check it. Sometimes my intern checks it for me. Just know that if I don't respond right away, I'm trying to get to you. It's just, I literally get 100 emails a day, literally. So, but just know that you're on my radar. Okay. I'm not ignoring you. But yes, Courtney Fraser, feel free to email me. Deborah Hubert says, I do have more peace of mind now. Miss Tamara still dealing with feelings of great grands in toxic family. Okay, that was a little backwards, but I get what you're saying. You're still dealing with some feelings, but you do have a little bit of peace of mind. Keep in mind, which is good. Keep in mind, and this is for all of you, that if you're still kind of grappling with family toxicity and trauma and all of that stuff, that's okay. You may deal with that for the rest of your life. What you really want to zone in on is how well you cope with it, right? I told somebody the other day, one of my clients who lost a husband, that we don't get over the loss of a loved one. We never really get past the death of somebody that we truly and deeply love and care about. We just learn to deal with the loss. And so that is also true of family toxicity and family trauma, that even though you may be away from your family, or you desire to be away from them, or maybe you've walked away and you said, you know what, osteo amigos, or however you say that, I'm not dealing with this. Maybe you've walked away. Even if you have done all of that, it doesn't mean that you're not going to still love them from afar also. But oh my God, I'm getting so lost in my comment here. I'm so tired. But keep in mind, I think I was going here, keep in mind that you're going to continue to deal with feelings that may include grief and loss, may include anger, depression, anxiety. You may never get over that. You may experience that for the rest of your life. But what is key is that you can cope with it. That's what I'm trying to say. Thank you for that, Deborah. All right, guys, it is past my bedtime. I'm starting to talk in circles. It is 10:15. All right. I just want to make sure I'm not missing. Heather Smith says toxic families have a lot of parallels with cult dynamics. Yeah, they really do. They do. Let me know if you want me to talk about that, because I did a interview 6 years ago about that, where dysfunctional family dynamics can sometimes look like religious cults, and there's a lot of overlap. So let me know if you want me to talk about that. Hello, Jacob. Nice to see you. I haven't seen you in a while. All right, guys. Good night. I have to go. I wish I could continue to answer questions and be here, but I can't. It is late. It is beyond late. So thank you so much for being a part of this live chat for me, for tuning in, for having conversations. I thank you for that every single live chat. Next live chat, I think we're going to talk about something that all of you have questions about, and that's probably going to be the interplay or the connection between an autism spectrum disorder and PTSD. So stay tuned for that. Okay. Love you guys so much. Thank you for all the love and support. I see all your wonderful comments. Good night, Sean Hammer. I'm good night. Cherry's Jubilee. Good night. Citizen King, Dragon Sassin, Dragon Man Sassin, Mel Kep. Good night. I'll see you guys soon. Bye.